This is a university, pretty good. Universities are better. The students come in. Unfortunately, they have vacations, summer vacations. It's hard to survive. The pizza joints, the people who actually feed and amuse the students and support the students, they have a difficult time when the students are out. So, but there's nothing as bad as the spikes you have. It is absolutely extraordinary. I think it's another place that only has 2 humongous conventions a year. Even those people who have convention centers even out the conventions. And by the way, there isn't a square foot available to have conventions in between. So it's very, very difficult for commerce to thrive. Now, of course, what you want is a mixed use downtown. What we're after, what everybody's after, the only way commerce is going to survive is when people live, work, amuse themselves, and shop downtown with a summer hiatus like that. And this is what allows a downtown to happen. There is no other way known. We need to get this to be a downtown that's mixed use. Now, okay, advantages. So far, I've mentioned 3 advantages. I want to emphasize that the greatest one is your biggest threat, which is your tax base, that the tax base comes substantially from one great monoculture. If that monoculture sneezes, there's not much of a plan B. You know, already your housing taxes are higher than your competing cities nearby. So this is a place without a plan B. What I would hope is that the way to think about this is that by making this commercially viable in a different way, and the analogy I'm going to make again, is you have a dinosaur. Okay, the dinosaur is magnificent. And I think you know it. It's a famous dinosaur. It's a brontosaurus. Magnificent. But if something happens to that brontosaurus, it collapses and crushes everything around, and there's no plan B. What we're trying to bring in now are little mammals. Little mammals, little mammals, little mammals. And what we'd like to do is over the coming decade, is have these mammals achieve the same biomass as the dinosaur. So you keep the dinosaur, but in case something happens to the dinosaur, which needs this tremendous fodder, magnificent, but 2 tons of fodder a day, what we'd like to have is 1,000, 2,000 young, sharp entrepreneurs that can live on 2 acorns a day. But together, they will add up to the same thing as the biomass. That's the great plan B. The plan B is to enable a lot of people to act. Now, what's the good news about this? First of all, you're well located. We know that. This is one of the reasons, by the way, this fantastic location in the middle of everything is one of the reasons that this will survive, that the dinosaur survives. It is at the center of the East Coast. They can do what they like in Las Vegas. They can do what they like in Atlanta. They can do what they like in California. You still have a tremendous radius for delivery. And remember that furniture is bulky and expensive to transport. It's one of the things that is of considerable cost. And so it's not only the tradition that you have of having done this for a very long time, you're really well located. And not only nationally, but look at this. And this is the key. This is your greatest asset. Within a 60-minute walk, there are 226,000 students. I repeat that, 226,000 students. And within a 75-minute drive, there's 335,000 students. Unbelievable. Youth in quantity. Youth in quantity. And they will drive 60 minutes, and they will drive 75 minutes if you can actually keep them occupied between 2 to 3 hours. Okay, right now, none of them are driving here. And by the way, this is way beyond High Point University. These are all of these colleges. By the way, the ones in the dark ink are the design schools that are nearby. These are places that have interior design departments, architecture departments. You're very, very design intensive. If I've asked Ben, our local partner here, to find all the other schools within the 75 minutes, and what you have is an intensely creative college crowd. I don't think it's out of the question to estimate that 50,000 students graduate within 75 minutes drive. 75 miles, 75 minutes drive, 50,000 students graduate, what can you do to capture them? Remember, they're looking for the next thing. You know, it's not only after senior year, after graduate school, you suddenly have educated people, 50,000 educated kids saying, what next? Okay, tremendous privilege. Our economic plan here is to capture as many as possible, to make this the place where they come. Now, beautiful. Look at how it glows dark here. Look at the circles of the universities. You know, this north-south axis here is actually where most of them are. It's a fantastically well-located town in terms of proximity to schools. So this is what we have to work with. You have an extraordinarily sprawled out city. Really bad job, by the way. Really bad job. There are people north of here that have no clue what's going on downtown. That's more than once that we saw the repeated concern. What are we going to do about the people up there? The people up there belong just as surely to Winston-Salem as they do to, Greensboro as they do to High Point. Okay, there's nothing we can do. You know, they are incredibly fluid. By the way, sprawl, as you may know, doesn't have a future. You know, it doesn't serve the aging population well. The aging folk, at some point, they stop driving. They can't live in suburbia. It literally does not support them. Atlanta is very worried about this, but unlike you, they're doing something about it. And of course, the young people who grew up in suburbia think that suburbia is uncool. They want to be downtown. They are getting licenses. There was a New York Times, I think, last week, I think 13% fewer licenses per age than the prior generation. You know, it's all about downtown. So the people, everything indicates that you have young people that like downtown, and they're going to be the pioneers. Now, just a little lesson about how this happens. And I'm going to try to make this very clear. Okay? The pioneers are always the young people that have an eye and have a need and no money ever. Okay? What they need to incubate a business is cheap real estate. Okay? Really cheap real estate. And it goes from the garage startups to Henry Ford. I mean, everything starts with cheap real estate. Cheap real estate used to be readily available for 100 years. From the left bank of Paris, which was a slum that was pioneered by the artists, and it became cool in 1870, to 1970, when people plowed into Soho and they moved into the warehouses and the mills. How were they able to do that? They did it under the radar of the municipal authorities. In other words, they didn't renovate to code. Okay? Now, what has happened since 1970 is a culture of bureaucracy and administration that has made it literally impossible for people to incubate businesses. So what arose to come up with this is the public-private partnership. Why did we need public-private partnerships for the first 300 years? You know, how did we used to do it? Why suddenly now can nothing be done unless they use public money or tax breaks or whatever? Because the government itself made it impossible to do anything affordably. And it's not just the amount of money. Have you ever seen a small developer lately? They can't amortize, renovating a small building, renovating a small restaurant, renovating 6 houses a year, building 6 houses a year. The process of bureaucratic approval cannot be amortized by the small developer. So everything's a big developer. People have to come from Charlotte, people have to come from this. Everybody, it's the baby boomers still doing all the development because the young people can't do a damn thing. And government has caused that. So if we want to bring the young people this, I'm not a libertarian here, okay? I'm not sort of ideological. We're confronting the fact that your only chance is bringing the young people, and they can't do it unless we lift the regulatory regime so that they can make use of the assets that you have without making them so expensive that, in fact, they have to go elsewhere. We have completely sterilized the potential The bureaucratic problem of expensive real estate has sterilized the potential of the young people, of the coming generation. And by the way, that's only the beginning of it, is the real estate. That's the one I deal with. Just starting a business at all is so difficult that it's driven half the kids to be artists because they can't cook anything without a permit, because they can't sell anything they cook without a permit, because they can't repair a damn thing without a permit, like nothing. I could never have started my office in 1974. I could never have confronted, in that recession of 74, I would have had to work for somebody else. But it was so much easier to start. And my clients were 30 years old. And we just did it. We did it, and that's gone. And I think it's not only profoundly unfair to the coming generation, it doesn't work. It's not going to work for them. And only those places that are light on the bureaucracy are going to succeed. And you know where those places are? In other countries. Do you want to get anything done in Miami? Go to Panama City. Do you want to get anything done in Texas? And that's pretty libertarian. Go to Mexico. It isn't just cheap labor. It's the ability to get on with it that's important. So one of the things that's going to be so creative about this proposal is we're going to pioneer here. And I've already gotten some thumbs up from people involved, from some of your elected officials, certainly from the city manager. Thumbs up on getting on with it and trying to recruit, getting ahead of that curve and making this place the coolest place where the young people automatically come. So that's a huge theme. Now, there's also the older folk, who also need their restaurants, their walkability. There are the families that need their kids and want to come downtown. And we were fortunate because it didn't happen this way, but the sites that we were given, the downtown site, the uptown site, the Dead Mall, and the so-called College Village were perfect to hit each one of those. This was sheer luck to hit some of all of these segments. So here's the sites that we have. By the way, it looks like very small. Do you see how small that is in your city? It's actually huge. This is really, really, really huge. There's no way you can walk from one to the other of these places. You will always drive. And so we have a problem of breaking it down into separate areas. And that's what we have. Okay, so these are the projects. You will be receiving a report that breaks this down into independent. They're mutually supportive projects, but they're independent. This project 1D, this project 1C, 1A, 1B, et cetera. It's going to be very, very clear. It's going to be a thin report, very clear about what is to be done in each of those places. Again, this is, none of these old planning reports are this thick, getting on with it, which stay on the shelf. Okay, so this is it. It was originally thought that we would do the uptown area. Okay, and the uptown area, which is Main Street, from up here, the Wellborn Street area, all the way to the library, came into being because the wires were to be buried, the overhead wires. There's poor America. There is so much faith that revival will ensue when you have a sign ordinance and when you bury your overhead wires. Okay. Well, the bad news is that's not enough. It hardly gets you off the ground. I mean, it doesn't even raise your spirits, as I'll show you. You're just putting money down the rat hole, okay? Unless you follow up with the whole street space, the so-called complete streets. Okay? Now, one of the things I thought about today, by the way, the team has grown rather fond of your public services department and your transportation department and your other department, because although they were as grumpy as any of those people ever are at the beginning, they have actually responded with incredible agility to our, and the only yes, they deserve it. I mean, incredible agility. Do you realize that when we started working on the library down here, I'll show you, last Wednesday at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were trying to make the library the southern termination of the pedestrian way, your public library, and we heard that a 6-laner was not about to be built, was being built there already. I hear it at 3 o'clock. We present an alternate. I realized that we had to basically upset that apple cart very quickly. I presented at 6. You may have heard that. 8 o'clock I get a call that night, or Wendy gets a call saying you're meeting with the city manager at 8, who's going to set up a meeting with basically the Public Works team. By 9 o'clock, 9:30, the city manager they had agreed to give it a chance. By a day later, they had stopped the work in that area of the site, of the road, going a mile south. We're working down there. We could see it the next day. The machines weren't there. They were, uh-oh. Matt? Oh, there it is. Is it coming up? It's sensitive, I shouldn't touch it? Okay, sensitive. It's the only sensitive thing here in this whole city. You guys are tough. Anyway, by the next day, in spectacular fashion, like it was something like 1944, when Americans could actually make a decision. The next day, it was done. Our engineers were with their engineers. Yesterday, 6, 7, 8 engineers were there. It wasn't our design in the end, but it was pretty close to our design. It was absolutely argued through, and there it was. I mean, just done. It was fantastic. I would like to make just one suggestion. I think that Public Works should be unified, because part of the problem, or one of the things we discovered, is that these various departments were delighted to talk to each other. And they didn't know that, we're rebuilding this, and this pipe is 100 years old, et cetera. One of the things we did by stirring the pot is we got these people to talk to each other. And just the fact that they get along, which they do, doesn't mean they're talking to each other. I think you should have a unified Public Works department in which everybody's in it, just like we did in the charrette. Everybody in the same room, every specialist talking to each other continually. Because we did discover an absence of coordination. The best thing that happened in this is that all these people were working together for the first time in a long time. And that's why I'd like to go back to the old Public Works department, in which the entire agenda of the public space in this city, the entire complete street, which is the public realm in America, is handled in a coherent way rather than by specialists. Anyway, so that was a great story. Now, we were given this whole thing, and we did some scale comparisons. And one of the things we did is we thought that's much, much, much too long, okay? Much too long. The first thing we did is we clipped the upper portion and said, take that money and let's spend it down here where it really matters. But this is our proposal. Our proposal is only here, this length. And I'd just like to say that this length is longer than the Main Street by maybe 25% than the Main Street in Greensboro, okay? So that's much more than you need. So let's just concentrate the excellence. I think trying to spread it too thin, you'll end up with mediocrity. So we'd like to take a lot of that budget and actually put it together and do what the next proposal is like. Okay, this is something else in the wrong place. These are the existing buildings that you have, very disaggregated. Let me just orient you. This is Main. This is Jefferson. This is Farris. Lexington, sorry. Jefferson is Peter. Oh, no, that's Freeman. Lexington and Farris, which turned out to be the center of everything, and then the library at the end. Okay. And the scheme that we have is we leave this till later. We did the design. This is called what wood? Wellburn. Wellburn up here. It's designed. It's fully designed. Definitely second stage. We'd like to go from a gateway, essentially a great symbolic, spectacular gateway here in this intersection to another gateway at the library. But the actual center is the intersection of Farris, which we call the Farris Crossroads, because of the very large number of people that live in the other side, on both sides, within walking distance of it. And of course, the Adams Inn is the beginning of it. The Adams Inn catalyzes everything. So this is the additional stuff. See, there it is. Remember, what we're trying to do is every new building heals the place, makes it more pedestrian friendly. We're trying to mask the parking lots. The parking should be in the back. People will never walk past an open parking lot. It's a hostile environment. They'll walk past the building, particularly if it's a shop front. So you'll see